Welcome back to the She Hit Refresh podcast, a podcast for women aged 30 and up who want to figure out and fast track their move abroad. My name is Cepee, rhymes with Peppy, and I'm your host. As you can tell, I am not in my regular studio, which is my living room in Malaga, Spain. Today, I'm still in the US and in a co-working space. So we are working with what we have, with the background, with the lighting. It is what it is, y'all. But I'm so happy to have you here again for this week's episode. Today is a special one because we have a returning guest who is Jacinda Fuller. You may remember Jacinda. She was on the podcast back in March of, I believe, 2022. So that was a while ago. When Jacinda came on the pod, she had been living in Spain for 2 years. She moved from the US to Spain in 2020. In the fall, which was basically the height of the pandemic there. Literally, she moved 6 months after the world came to a halt. And she spent a few years abroad in Spain and then ultimately had to move back to the US. But she is back on the pod today to talk about her life in Guatemala. So excited to hear about her changes. Jacinda moved at 35 years young. She just turned 40. And I'm super excited to have her on. So Jacinda, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. It's so nice to be back. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. All right. Well, as I just mentioned, last time we spoke, you were soaking up the rays in Fuengirola, Spain, which is actually so close to where I live now in Malaga. I think it's like, 20, 30 minutes. Very, very close. So you were on the Costa del Sol. But as I've just revealed, you are no longer in Spain. So curious just to hear about how your time in Spain ended and really what prompted you to leave the country.
So my time in Spain ended due to the switch in programs. I started with the language assistant program, and then I switched over to another program known as Vega, which is similar. It took me to Alicante. So I stayed in Fuengirola for 2 school years, and then I went to Alicante. The placement that I received was more with the older kids. And so my passion was for the littles. I love the littles and working with the younger. So I wanted to finish the year and then try to do another year at another school. Unfortunately, at the time, they didn't have any other placements. And so that left me with the decision, should I try to go somewhere else in Spain after I just got comfortable in Alicante, or if I move again, should I move back home? It was a tough decision, and I decided at the time it was best just to go back home to regroup for a little while.
Got it. Oh, wow. Okay. I don't know that I knew all the details. So how many years in total were you in Spain for?
For 3 years.
For 3 years. And were you enjoying your life there? I mean, outside of the work, I mean, as Jacinda mentioned, she went to Spain on the teaching assistant programs that many Americans have done, including myself. And a lot of times, it's a great way to get you there, but it's not always a long-term solution to wanting to live in Spain because there's only a certain amount of years that you can participate in the program. Plus, there's a financial cap on how much you can earn, especially if you're in your 30s, 40s, and beyond. You probably want to be making more money just to have the quality of lifestyle of someone in our stage of life. Interested to hear, were you happy in Spain, or were you kind of ready to leave, even given the problems with the program?
Honestly, I was very happy in Spain. Spain was one of those places that, even though it was my first international move, it was one of those places that felt like my happy place. And I was so excited. I enjoyed especially southern Spain, and Andalusia has my heart and will always have my heart. So I really enjoyed my time in Spain. So it was very sad and tough when it was time for me to leave.
Yes, I imagine that was a tough decision to have to make the decision of, okay, I'm going to go back home. And home was where again?
So I'm originally from Oklahoma, but home for me at the time was Phoenix, Arizona.
Got it. So to make that decision of, I've done 3 great years in Spain, but I think the best thing for me right now is to go back to Arizona. I mean, how did it feel to make that decision? Did you feel kind of forced to make that decision? I don't know. What was that transition like emotionally also to be having to leave?
So I felt in that situation, I was a little bit forced because I didn't have another option at the time. And so, as we know, under the language assistant program, your visa that you're tied to is no longer valid. And so at that point, I felt it was more forced that I had to return home. However, I felt okay about going home because I knew it wasn't a something that had to be forever. It was just like a transition on the way to the next thing. And so I felt okay and reassured that once I go back and readjust, things will be okay.
I mean, that's a great mindset to have. And I'm glad that you looked at it that way, because just because, you know, you had to make a detour doesn't mean it was the end of the road of your journey abroad. And I just remembered, I forgot to mention, you know, your work background. I know we talked about that in the previous episode, so we'll link that in the show notes to my previous interview with Jacinda. But if you can remind people, you know, what did you do for work before you actually came to Spain on the language assistant program?
So my background is full-fledged education. I've been working with kids for many, many years, taught in elementary school. And so naturally, that was what I was more drawn to for the language assistant program. And I just continued on that path, being able to work with kids, but I was able to work with kids from elementary all the way up to high school while I was my time in Spain.
Fabulous. And is that what you went back to? Like when you went back to Arizona, did you have a plan? Did you arrive with any plans in place, or you're like, I'll just get there and figure out what is next?
Oh, life has a funny way of getting us together, but I didn't have a full-fledged plan. I thought, oh, I'll go back, and I figured, oh, if I find a teaching job, that's a natural choice. And so one of my former coworkers is now a principal, and I reached out to her and asked her about any positions at her school, and I was able to find a job with her school and work there. So that was how I spent my last time in the U.S.
Fabulous. And let's just so we have the timeline correct. So you were in Spain for 3 years. And when did you move back to the U.S.? What year was that?
I moved back in August of 2023.
You moved to Spain in 2021. Okay, yes. And got it, right? Or 2020. Now I'm confused.
Yeah, I moved in 2020. It was like in the whole height of the pandemic and everything like that. Yes.
Yes, you moved. Yes, height of pandemic was 2020. Oh my gosh, 2020 to like 2024 is just a blur with all the dates and the years.
Yes,
okay, so we got
absolutely.
it right. So you moved back to the U.S. You moved to Spain in 2020. You moved back to the U.S. in 2023. And how long were you there teaching before you thought, you know what, I'm going to get up on out of here again?
I completed an entire school year for 2023, 2024. And I knew I wanted to leave again. The nagging feeling that never goes away. I knew I wanted to go again. I also knew that I wanted to go somewhere that they spoke Spanish. So I started applying again and putting out feelers. And less than a year later, I was out again.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Okay, so it sounds like the universe was in your corner there.
Yeah.
Where were you looking for work, and where were you searching online? How did you know where to look to find roles that you were looking for?
I had met somebody prior who told me about a recruiting service that recruits teachers to teach specifically in Latin America. And this was called AMISA. AMISA is the agency. So I applied there. I had a couple interviews. I also applied to some other places that was outside of Spanish-speaking countries, but I was just kind of, shooting my shot to see what could happen. And luck would have it that this position that I'm in now was the one that I interviewed for and received an offer. And that's how I came out to where I am currently.
Got it. Great. And then so it's with a school, and what kind of, what age range are you working with?
Yes, it is a school, and I am currently a first grade teacher, and I teach full subjects in English, and I'm a homeroom teacher.
Love it. And I'm assuming this is with Guatemalan children. This isn't at an international school. You're working in the public school system?
It's a private school. It is U.S.-based curriculum, so they do follow like the U.S. calendar and things like that. So it is one of the international schools in Guatemala.
Very cool. Okay. And are there other international teachers there too? I would assume so, but are there other Americans there?
Yes, there are. We have a little bit of a different mix there. So it is nice to be able to relate to some other teachers, but also learn from teachers from another culture as well.
Very cool. And are the students then from all over the world?
So the students are mostly from Guatemala, but we do have some students who are international. Mostly in this case, the international mix is mostly the staff. So like the teachers that they hire are international who have the ability to speak English, because the goal of the school is for the children to graduate from school being able to speak English fluently.
I love that. And then I know you said, you had gone on this website. Did you say it was MISA?
So it's AMISA.
A Misa, got it. Okay. So you said you were shooting your shot, you were applying. Was there a particular country that you were hoping to get selected to go to? Were there other, I guess, candidates on your short list other than Guatemala?
I was aiming for Mexico. I was aiming for Mexico because it was closer to the U.S. They still spoke Spanish. And so I could get that cultural piece that I crave. However, none of those options panned out. And so when the opportunity for Guatemala came up, I did take some time to think about it. I was able to talk to some teachers or some people who were there who experienced life there. This is my first experience here. I'd never been to Central America, so everything was new. And in my heart, I felt like, it was the right opportunity to go. And I believe that you go where you're meant to be at that time. So the doors open when they need to open for that particular time in your life.
Yeah, I was so excited when I heard that you were making another move abroad. And yeah, I was very curious about why Guatemala, but now it all makes sense. How did your family and friends react to you wanting to move abroad again? Because they were probably very excited to have you home after your 3-year stint in Spain. Mm-hmm. And then you got a job. So maybe they're thinking, oh, she's going to be here. Yeah. She's back. And then you kind of dropped the bomb of like, oh, I'm leaving again.
Yes. Okay. So that was interesting. They were a little like, wow, you just, like they said, you just got here. But at the same time, since I moved to Spain, they've been a lot more supportive because they know that once I win, I've done it once. And they saw that I was happy and I was able to survive and everything was fine. And so I think that was more reassurance for them to know that wherever else I go, I'll be fine too. And so they were supportive of my decision.
Love that. Fabulous. Now let's talk a little bit about Guatemala and Spain, because you've lived in both. So you lived in different parts of the world, which is great. I would love to have your perspective. And I know you really enjoyed your time in Spain. How would you compare the two experiences? I mean, how does life compare for you in both places?
Guatemala has been known for like being dangerous and things of that nature. In Spain, I felt a little bit more at ease in terms of like being able to walk around and do things like that. Not to say that I've ever felt a danger or threat in here, but everything is more accessible in Spain, and here is different. It's more car-centric, more busy, and so that is different. But I will say that I love the people here. I feel like Guatemalan people are very warm and welcoming, and so that has made my stay here a lot easier.
Yeah, and I meant to ask, what city are you in?
I am just outside of Guatemala City. It's a city called Mixco.
And do you know the population? Is it a big city, a smaller city?
I don't know the exact population, but it's pretty big. It's pretty big. It's more like it's almost like, for example, when you have Phoenix in Arizona, like the outskirts, it's like all kind of mushed in together. It's sort of like that, but it's very big.
Got it. Okay. And is the culture similar in terms of, in Spain, especially you were in the South, people are gathering, they are outside, they are staying up late, they want to be together. Is that the vibe that you're getting where you live in Guatemala? Are people out and about a lot, and do they stay out late as well?
Yes, actually, believe it or not, people are out and about there. It's sort of like in Spain, where Sunday is like a family day where you get together and have, lunch and dinners with your family. So that piece, the family and the cultural piece, is very similar. In fact, they definitely party. They party a lot. I hear fireworks, random occasions. There's fireworks. It doesn't have to be anything special, but yes, so those things are very similar.
Love it. Love that Latin joy. Let's talk about maybe what you miss from Spain, because obviously these are two different places. So what do you miss the most about Spain?
I would say I miss the most. One of the main things is the weather and the accessibility to, be able to explore different, the easiness of being able to explore different pueblos, and also if you want to hop over to another country is much easier. So I would say that, and I just felt at home in Spain. So it's one of those things that's hard to explain, but it's definitely something that I felt.
Yeah, I can get that. I mean, there's definitely places, countries or cities that we just connect with more than other places. So that makes sense. And then what do you love about Guatemala? Like maybe what's different about Guatemala from Spain that you really love?
Okay, so for me, I love nature. I love nature so much. And there is a lot. It's very green because there is a rainy season here. So, you get plenty of rain to get green. There's places where you can go hiking. There's places where you can go to like waterfalls. You can go to ruins. So I love the diversity and the things you can do for nature. And I have actually went on some hikes myself. I went on a couple of volcano hikes, and so that was really nice. So that is one of the things I do like here. It's like eternal spring. So the weather is not too hot all the time or too cold. It's pretty temperate most of the year. So I love that about Guatemala.
And then let's talk about language, because you moved to Guatemala, you wanted to move to another Spanish speaking country. In Spain, you were learning Spanish speaking Spanish. But as we know, like languages are different in different places. So how does your Spanish skills that you learned in Spain, how are they serving you in Guatemala? And what are some of the differences?
So they are still serving me pretty well, actually, because although some words are different, the general theme is pretty much similar. And so I can go and I can, order food or get groceries or do those things that you need to do, because one thing about here is not many people speak English. So you're almost forced to speak Spanish, which for me is fine because I wanted to improve my language anyway. But yes, there are some differences in words, for sure.
That's good to know, because also, in Spain, especially where you were living in Fuengirola and Alicante, there are big populations of people who speak English, but I think a lot of Spanish people speak quite a bit of English to an extent because tourism is such a big part of the economy there. So it's almost a little bit hard to try to speak Spanish all the time in certain places in Spain.
True.
All right. So I do want to talk about your career and maybe, some pivots that you were thinking about and what you are thinking about moving forward. As you mentioned, you're an educator in the U.S. You came to Spain and you were teaching. But I remember when you were in Spain, you were considering making a career pivot and you were interested in possibly becoming a VA or working in instructional design. So I'm curious to hear about that career pivot and if you're still maybe doing that on the side, or what happened with that, because I know you're teaching again in Guatemala.
We have these big ambitions and hopes, and sometimes we never get them off the ground. It is something that I am still considering and actually still working on. So I have made steps for virtual assistants. So I finally was able to set up an LLC. And so now it's all about making sure that I put myself out there and start being able to work again, because I do have some experience as a virtual assistant. But now I think I'm ready to go more forward so that I can fully transition in the future to be able to do that, to continue to be able to live a proper year or so on my own terms.
I love that, because I think, a lot of people out there probably listening are interested in making a career pivot, and that is great. And maybe becoming a virtual assistant, but, it does take a lot of work, right? Like it's not easy to start your own freelancing business and find clients. So I'm just curious to hear, because you were in it, what were some of the challenges that you faced, or maybe things that surprised you when you were trying to make a transition or just like dip your toe in the VA world?
Sometimes I think we can be our own worst enemy in terms of hold ourselves back, but it is, you're right. It's hard work. It's not like you're going to magically wake up and you have all these clients. You have to be networking. You have to put yourself out there, something that also can be uncomfortable, and you have, being visible and present. And so those are things I still struggle with now, but I'm starting to learn to get more comfortable with doing this. And I know it's the only way to be able to make it. And so this is one of those periods in my life where I feel like, I am ready for the next step. And in order to get something different, I know I'm going to have to do something different.
Yes, words of wisdom there. Well, any tips, and maybe that is the tip, but any tips for other women listening who are teachers and thinking about making a pivot into the virtual world? What advice would you give them, given your experience?
Research, connect with other people, to get a feel of what kind of options you have. Networking is super critical. You just really have to, you have to step over that fear, because most of the time it is us holding ourselves back. So if you're fearful or you're afraid, just take a chance, and bet on yourself, because at the end of the day, you're the only one who can make change happen for you.
I think our audience would be interested to know about the cost of living, kind of Spain versus Guatemala. Is there a big difference in your costs, especially when it comes to housing and other expenses?
The biggest difference for me, because with my school, it's a little bit different because the school is more involved in helping you get set up versus Spain, where you were pretty much on your own and you had to do everything, on your own. Because I had support from the school, it makes things a lot easier and a little bit more feasible and affordable.
And in terms of making friends, has there been a difference in maybe ease of making friendships between the two countries?
Working usually is the first place that you generally meet people, and I've met some good people at my job. I haven't met a lot of people like outside of work. However, I know that I feel like it's easier because I feel like the people are really warm and they're very open. Not to say that people in Spain are not, but it's just a little bit different in temperament, I think, here.
Yeah, I get that. My mom is from Colombia, so I grew up in a half Colombian household. And I definitely feel like, Spanish people, I think they are the friendliest people in Europe. But then when you kind of compare Spain and then southern Spain, they're like one of the friendliest in Spain. But when you compare that to Latin America, really like Latin America is definitely another level of like warmth and friendliness and generosity. So I can definitely see that. Okay, well, let's talk about some reflections from your journey, because you have been out of the country since 2020. You have now lived in 2 different countries. So you have the perspective of having done this twice. Guatemala, has it given you so far what you've been looking for in terms of, not wanting to be in the U.S. and have that life abroad?
Yes, it has given me that. And I think at this space in my life, it's given me time, to be for solitude, to be able to reflect more, and to really be thinking about the next path and the next step. So I think this was like a perfect backdrop, moving forward into the future.
Talking about the future, do you see yourself staying in Guatemala long term? Are you still maybe dreaming of returning to Spain, or is there somewhere else that is on your radar?
I don't see myself staying here long term. I would love to go back and stay in Spain. But I'm also still like open to other opportunities and see where that leads. But yes, long term, I can see myself totally living in Spain for many years.
Love that. Yeah, we would love to have you back.
Yes.
And yes, crossing fingers. You said you would like to possibly live in Spain for many years. Do you think that you would live abroad kind of indefinitely, or do you see, when you look into the future, your life taking you back to the U.S. at some point?
Honestly, after 2 experiences now, I feel like this is something that I'm looking for indefinitely. And so now is more so just getting on the path to be able to help me do that long term. And so that's where I am now. But yes, it's something I will never say never, because anything can happen, life changes. But as part as right now, it's something I see indefinitely.
Love that. Yes. And that's why I really wanted to have you back on the podcast, just to show people that a move abroad is a journey, right? Sometimes where we start isn't where we stay, or maybe things don't work out for whatever reason. And so we pivot and we go somewhere else, but it is a journey. Like Guatemala is going to be one of the places on your path, and hopefully life brings you back to Spain, but you are also open to what opportunities do come up that will allow you to live this life abroad. In this theme of reflection, what is one thing that you've learned about yourself from your life abroad and moves abroad over the past, 5 years now?
Yeah. I would say resilience, just that resilience, because not every day is sunshine and roses when you live abroad. Overall, my experience is wonderful and I don't have any regrets, but there are some hard days, some tough times, some tough situations to deal with. But being resilient and being able to make it through, and also just staying open. So I've become more open and more patient. And so I think that will set me up for, however many more moves I need till I get back to Spain. So.
Yes. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, there are definitely challenges in life abroad, because that's life. Life has its ups and downs, and that's going to happen to you abroad as well. Are there any specific challenges that you can share that you faced abroad, just to give listeners an idea of like, what are some of the tough things that they may face?
One of the biggies is like bureaucracy. So like when it comes to visas and paperwork and, being from the U.S., we're used to things being so fast, but then you have to learn, when you go somewhere else, you have to learn to adapt to the way they do things and not be in such a comparison mode, because that can also hinder your experience as well. So yes, that's one of the biggest Challenges, I would say, will be the bureaucracy and just average living. Like, we don't live exactly the same. You have to learn how to take things slow and slow down when you are so used to being in a rush and everything being so fast.
Yes, that sense of urgency that we're just wired with, really you have to learn how to undo that in many places abroad because things are at a different pace. And like you had just mentioned about learning patience, I think I've learned so much patience too abroad just from having to adapt to different cultures and the way that people do things in different places.
Absolutely.
All right, Jacinda. Well, we are at the end here, but I would love to know, what advice would you give someone who wants to move abroad, but they feel stuck, they feel scared, they feel like they might be making a mistake? What would you tell them?
I would say if it's in your heart, go for it. No matter, it's not a race, no matter how long it takes, you can prep, you can plan. But if it's something that you really want to do, I feel like if you don't take an opportunity, you'll have some regret. So yes, fear is natural, but you can do anything that you set your mind to, even through the challenges, and just go for it. It's never too late. I started my first journey at 35, so it's never too late.
Thank you so much. And if anybody wants to connect with you, where can they find you?
They can find me on Facebook or also on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. And we will share those links in the show notes. Well, Jacinda, thank you so much for joining me again after many years on the podcast to give us an update. Wishing you all the best on your journey and hoping to see you here back in Spain.
Thank you so much for your time, and it was fun. I hope everybody enjoys the podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and leave feeling like a move abroad is even more possible for you. If you're happy with what you saw, I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and leave a question or comment because I would love to hear from you. If you're ready to take action on your dream to move abroad, be sure to grab my visa guide to Europe. It's your roadmap to over 50 viable visa options in 19 countries. You can grab the link below in the show notes. And don't forget to get on the wait list for my next Move Abroad After 30 Masterclass, a masterclass for women age 30 and up, which is a step-by-step training to help you fast track your move abroad. And grab the link in the show notes as well. And last but not least, a huge shout out to our sponsor, International Living. Thank you so much for making this season possible. Until next time, ciao for now.